Hey y'all, it's Van Lufa here. If I look a little haggard, it's because I am. It is now 1 a.m. I had quite a bit of footage to watch when I got home from work tonight. I got home around 11. I just didn't quite get as far into today's footage or today's trial as I had been the last couple days. It just is what it is. And so it's a little late, but we're going to do it. First and foremost, the new segment, what is Van's scrub of the day? It is llamas wearing scarves, ice skating. Because why not? Okay, so we are going to get into day 3 of the Derek Chauvin trial, March 31st, 2021. If you know, you know. Cheers. Okay. I'm going to have to bring this book closer. I'm blind. There were no motions to deal with today. So we started the day with a cross-examination of Genevieve Hansen by Eric Nelson. Genevieve, as you recall from yesterday, was the firefighter who happened upon the scene. She was out for a walk. The question that Eric Hansen had for her was, on that day, did you show them your credentials as a firefighter? She said no, and he said no further questions. As a redirect from the state, the attorney asked, did you have any ID on you? She said no, she did not. They asked her if any of the officers had talked to her. She said no. She said from what she saw, the officers weren't even really talking to each other. Then the next state's witness, number 9, was a gentleman by the name of Christopher Martin. And if you watched it, tell me, this is just a side note, he totally reminded me of a young Michael from Good Times. Watch it. You cannot unsee it. Okay. Christopher Martin is 19 years old. He is a Cup Foods employee. He and his mother also lived above Cup Foods, and he was in school during that time, but he was doing it online. He was a cashier at Cup Foods. He had been there for about 2 months. I believe he and his mom had lived there around 4 months upstairs. He talked about the different services that they provide. Cup Foods was kind of referred to as a one-stop shop. There was also tobacco sold there in a separate area. That day he worked the 3 to 8 shift. They close at 8. There was the manager plus 4 to 5 other employees on that night. Mr. Floyd came in. He had just talked about, he noticed how tall he was. He had a short conversation with him about sports. He, at that point, said it appeared that Mr. Floyd was high. He sold him some cigarettes. Then they showed a security cams inside the store. Exhibit 29 was a video of that cam footage. They watched it and then just discussed different things that were going on at the time. They showed him getting the cigarettes for Mr. Floyd, taking the $20 bill. He thought it looked fake. He told the manager. The manager told him to go get Mr. Floyd, who was in his vehicle outside, and to bring him back in to talk to him. He and another coworker went out to the car to get Mr. Floyd, and the footage shows them going to the passenger side of his vehicle and speaking with the other person that was on the passenger side, and they refused to come in. Exhibit 31 that was the first time they went out to get him. There were 3 people in his car, a gentleman in the passenger seat and a woman in the back seat. And so they walked back in, told the manager that he refused to come in. The manager said, go out there again and try to get him. He needs to come in. So he went out there with 2 different co-workers, different from the first one that went out with him. They went out back to the car on the passenger side. They mostly talked to the passenger who was in his car, his friend. Hold on just a moment. So sorry about that. My daughter came downstairs for a second. Okay. So the co-workers from Cup Foods were talking to the passenger in George Floyd's truck and talked about how there was a fake bill. The friend pulled out another fake bill and ripped it in half and threw it outside at the co-workers, apparently. But they did refuse to come in that second time. So when they went back into Cup Foods, then the manager just said, call the police and have the police deal with it. So that's why they were called. The police came and they spoke to the manager. The manager showed them where Mr. Floyd was parked, and they went there. Mr. Martin just went back to working, doing his thing, and then he heard a commotion out front, and that was when he left the store to see what was going on. This was, the actual incident with Mr. Floyd on the ground. He saw Derek Chauvin with the knee on his neck. He started recording with his phone, but deleted that footage later. He recorded until one of his co-workers was pushed by an officer, I believe Officer Tao. So one of his co-workers had also come out and was standing on the curb with the rest of the crowd. Exhibit 33 was a video outside of the store of the crowd. It showed him originally first and foremost calling his mother, telling his mother there was something going on out here and please don't come down here, it's not safe. He then talked about his guilt, his feelings of guilt because he couldn't do anything to stop what had happened and Mr. Floyd had died. This seems to be a common theme. And he said this because they asked him how he felt about what he had seen. Okay, because on the footage, he was standing out in front of the store with his hands upon his head, just walking around like, so that's why they said, what was going on? What was going through your mind? And that's why he still talked about it. And then it showed his mother coming down, and then he went back into the store. They asked him if he still worked there, and he said no. He quit his job shortly after that because he no longer felt safe. With cross-examination by the defense, Eric Nelson talked about his interview with the BCA on September 10th of 20, and also his meeting with the prosecution on 3/12/21. Talked a little bit about that. They reviewed things he said in the transcripts. They just asked about the layout of the store and those types of things. Apparently, the passenger in Floyd's car had previously before that attempted to use a counterfeit bill, but Christopher noticed that it was counterfeit and didn't let him use it. So the policy of the store is if you accept a counterfeit bill, then that money is deducted from your salary. He talked about how Floyd and his friend were in the store earlier that day. It showed footage of the manager had a gun on him. He carried it around for safety. The footage showed him holding up the bill from Floyd where he realized that it was probably counterfeit. He talked about how he felt Mr. Floyd was under the influence. And when he did call 911, the dispatcher was told that. They talked with him about his statements describing Floyd's behavior in the store. He told law enforcement, and this was during the transcript when he was interviewed in September of 2020 at the BCA. He had said that Floyd couldn't comprehend the conversation that they were having. He was very slow to react with statements and things like that. On redirect by the state, they had asked him if he had any formal training on how to spot a counterfeit bill, and he said no. Today he described Floyd as he was very friendly when he was in the store, but that he did seem high. On cross-examination by Nelson, again, they just talked about counterfeit bills. State's witness number 10 was Christopher Belfry. He's a 45-year-old gentleman. Exhibit 1 was a video footage of him driving up to the intersection. And this was after Floyd, was in his car after they had left the Cup Foods. He actually parked behind Mr. Floyd. When he pulled up behind Mr. Floyd, there were 2 officers that were already at Floyd's car, guns drawn. At that point, he started recording. He recorded for a little bit. That was the footage they were showing. But then he stopped because he saw more cops showed up to the scene, and he didn't want to get trapped in there because he didn't know what was going to happen. So he went ahead and stopped recording, and then he ended up moving out of that parking spot and parking across the street, so he wasn't trapped in all of the police traffic. Exhibit 35 was his short video there of the cops, guns drawn on Floyd. It showed Floyd getting out of the car and where they cuffed him. The second cop came around to the passenger side. Oh, he was on the passenger side. He came around to the driver's side to help assist with that. So Mr. Belfry started recording again once he got his car safely across the street. While he was there, he dropped off his fiance. She went in and did some shopping, and he was just waiting out into the car for her. At that point, when he moved his car across the street, his fiance was done shopping and got into the car. There was a convo between himself and his fiance, but they removed the audio and they just showed the video of what he saw. Exhibit 36 was a video and that was his second video, Mr. Belfry's, of Floyd sitting on the ground. There were 3 cops there now, just questioning, the other occupants in Floyd's car. He also then stopped recording that second video because he said a cop looked over at him and it scared him a little bit and he didn't want to get in trouble. The cops got Floyd up. He was in cuffs. So he went to leave. He thought, okay, they're just going to put him in the cop car and this is going to be over. So he pulled out of his parking spot and went to leave. He was driving towards that corner intersection where they were. He saw Floyd placed in the cop car and thought nothing more of it. Then they showed Mr. Belfry the Exhibit 1 again, which was the map of the scene, where he showed where he was originally parked, how he, which direction he came from to get there originally, then showed where he parked his car a second time after he left. There was no cross-examination on this witness. Then they went to the lunch break because there's always a break with Judge Cahill. State's witness number 11 was Charles McMillan. Mr. McMillan is 61 years old. He has a 3rd grade education. And he happened to be passing through the intersection of 38th and Chicago in his blue Dodge Caravan that night. He saw the scene. He also pulled over, and he told the lawyer because he pulled over because he is nosy. He also saw the officers at Floyd's car. He parked his car and got out of the car to observe, and he talked about what he saw. Then on Exhibit 38 were just photos of him, just to place him at the scene. He walked around the corner to watch them, put him in the car. He engaged with conversation with Mr. Floyd. And if you listen to any of the videos, as they're trying to put him in the car, you will hear him say, just get in the car, man, just get in the car. You're not going to win. This isn't worth it. Okay, that was Mr. McMillan. He also testified that he never saw him ever being violent with the police at that time. Exhibit 39 was a video, and basically it was the street cam footage with an embedded video of one of the officer's body cam vids. And it just showed a little bit closer of the conversation between him and Floyd. It showed Floyd saying that he was claustrophobic as they were trying to get him in the car. So Mr. McMillan knew who Officer Chauvin was. He said he had seen him 5 days earlier, just in the community, that they had a brief conversation. He didn't know his name, but he just knew him as a police officer in his community. It just shows footage of Mr. Floyd was yelling and moving around in the car. The officer said he was under arrest for forgery. And then, so they put him in the car, the police car, from the curb, okay? But then they ended up pulling him out of the car, out the other side onto the street. To me, at this point in time, it's still not clear to me why they pulled him out. I mean, other than I think they thought, you know, he was being unruly and they needed to restrain him. So they pulled him out of the car. They placed him on his stomach. And that's when Mr. Floyd started talking about how he couldn't breathe and all that stuff. At this point in the trial, when they were showing this footage, Charles broke down, and I mean broke down and sobbed. And he just talked about how helpless he feels. And then he made mention that his mom died on June 25th. And then the judge was quick to say, we're taking a break. So they took a break. They came back, and he was talking more about what he had heard Floyd say. Again, he was the one at the scene that's saying, just get up and get in the car. And Floyd was saying, I'm trying, I can't, you know. He observed there was foam coming out of Mr. Floyd's mouth. He described him as he was going in and out of consciousness. Exhibit 16 was video cam footage. Again, they played it. He talked about what he saw in the video. Exhibits 40 and 41 were just videos of him walking away from the scene after the ambulance left. He had just had a short exchange with Chauvin. Chauvin was getting back into his police car, and he just had some words for him and just, you know, basically told him what he just did was not right. And then there was another video, Exhibit 41, where he talked to the cop again and just had another conversation. There was no cross-examination by Nelson. And then there was another break, of course there was. Okay. If I could turn the page, we'd be in business. The state's witness number 12 was Lieutenant James Rugel. He was interviewed by Steve Schleicher for the state. He was a police officer for the Minneapolis PD for 32 years. He was a lieutenant for 21 of those years. He is what is known as a foundational witness. So he was not at the scene. He was not involved in this particular incident, but he is kind of laying the foundation and explaining things. And you'll see why. He manages the police technology unit. So he manages the equipment and the systems and the software that the officers use. He keeps the records. He manages those street cams or those cameras all over the city. He also manages the body cams. So he trains the officers on how to work the body cams, and you know, he just makes sure that the officers are knowledgeable of what they're doing. He's had many roles over the years with the Minneapolis PD. He started what is known now as the Strategic Information Center in 2010. So basically, he manages the network of public safety cameras throughout the city. That's what they're called, public safety cameras. There are approximately 250 cameras throughout the city of Minneapolis, most of them in what are considered high crime rate areas. The cams are monitored 24/7 at the Strategic Information Center. The footage is stored for 14 days on a server. If nobody requests that footage and it's not downloaded, it's gone after 14 days. However, you can request footage and then it is downloaded onto your computer or thumb drive or whatever, and then it's kept forever. A lot of footage is requested and downloaded for cases, evidence, etc. In reference to this as an incident, cam footage obviously was requested. They requested that intersection of 38th and Chicago from 7 p.m. to 11 p.m. that evening. He reviewed the footage the day afterwards just to make sure that they got everything that they needed. One point that he made, or that the state asked him about, was that, can any of this footage ever be altered at any time? And he said no, it can never be altered. Exhibit 42 was another video. It did not have sound, but it showed the cops arriving on scene at Cub Foods. They went into the store. It just showed them going into the store, and then the manager directing them outside to where Mr. Floyd was in his car. And then the footage was blocked by the Speedway sign, which is the convenience store across the street. So we didn't really see a lot there. We did not see them talking to Floyd. We didn't see them getting him out of the car and putting handcuffs on him. We did not see them putting him down on the sidewalk, sitting him down, but we did see them walk Floyd from across the street, through the crosswalk and over to the police car. And also during that time, we did see another officer show up to the scene for backup. Then they again showed Exhibit 1, which is the map of the scene. And what they were doing there was just pointing out where those public safety cams were. He talked about he now works for the BTU, and which is the technology unit. They have the body cams. As I mentioned before, they train officers on how to use them. They started wearing body cams in approximately 2016, 2017. Exhibit 214 was, they showed the body-worn camera policy for the Minneapolis PD. It's always on. It's just usually in standby if a cop isn't at a call, or they don't need to be recording for any reason. It's usually in standby, but it's always on. And then they have to tap it to get it going. And they're trained how to do this. Exhibit 47 was Officer Lane. So at this point now, they start showing the body cam footage from 4 different officers at the scene. Exhibit 47 was Officer Lane. They showed him arriving at Cub Foods and the manager directing them to Floyd's car, talking to Floyd at the car. They asked him to get out, and he didn't, so they pulled him out. They showed Floyd was upset and saying he was sorry, kept saying, sorry, I didn't do anything, that kind of thing. They cuffed him, walked him over to the sidewalk and sat him down. The cops did at that point ask him if he was on something. And then at that point, they get him up and they walk him to the cop car. They pat him down. That's when he talks about he was claustrophobic. And then they show the cops pulling him out on the other side. Exhibit 43 was body cam footage of Officer King, the same exact footage, just from a different vantage point and a different officer. Exhibit 49 was Officer Tao, same information. Exhibit 44 was Chauvin's body cam. Exhibit 48 was Officer Bluger, who I believe he was like a park officer. And then they admitted a ton of different exhibits into, they admitted it into evidence, and they gave all the numbers and who, they were still shots from different officers' body cams. I wrote them all down. I'm not going to go through them. There are way too many. But then at the end of that, they particularly wanted to show Exhibit 45, which is the body cam footage from Mr. Chauvin. What had happened was, when they pulled him out of the other side of the car before they put him down on the ground, Officer Chauvin's body cam came off. And it went under the car. So they showed that. At that point, the jury was allowed to leave. They were leaving, they were wrapping up. So they left, and then Nelson gets up to talk. And so, of course, this was off the record, and the jury didn't need to hear this. Officer Rugel was still up there, so Eric Nelson had some questions for him. He talked about how the state had shortened some of the body cam footage and that he had more extensive footage. And so he had questions for Lieutenant Rugel, just about how to, the software and all of that for the body cams. I wasn't completely sure why the jury couldn't hear this information, so leave a comment if somebody knows. They were just general questions about, different angles in the camera, how you can zoom in and, those kinds of things. And then he asked about the policy of the body-worn cameras, talked about how cops can turn them off. Then he just had more explanations about how he had a flash drive with all the extensive videos on it. Then he explained that the state wanted to show Peter Chang's cam footage. Peter Chang was the park officer that was called to assist the scene. And he just wanted to let the court know, because he wanted to make sure that that footage was admissible. He offered the thumb drive of all the extensive footage to be an exhibit, and the state objected to that. And so they talked about it for a little bit, and then Judge Cahill decided that they will deal with that issue on Friday morning at 9 a.m. And that was today. Again, an emotional day. I couldn't hardly stand it when Mr. McMillan broke down. This is an intense case, you guys. And let me just say, if you ever want to watch any footage of it, if you cannot stomach watching that video, do not watch this trial, because that video is played all day, every day. So just a little trigger warning there. Anyway, it is now 1:29, and I'm going to go to bed because I'm tired. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this. Again, I got some wonderful comments. I'm so excited about it. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you on the next one. Bye.